say another one.
Wait, I'm trying to remember what's my Oh, right, okay. Oh no,
I'm so glad I got this done today.
Do you hear this?
Yeah, and so do I say my capstone
my
is
whole name or
about?
just first name?
My capstone is about concentrated solar-powered Stirling engines for the purpose of reverse osmosis desalination and pump storage hydroelectricity.
I'm looking at the history of traditional corner stores in Dubai and the current standardization policy that's aiming to replace them.
65 Joules is a production about the fear of loss through the story of Mustafa, an 8-year-old boy who turns a cement factory into his playground.
My capstone is looking at divorce motivations for women in the UAE as divorce rate is increasing, so I wanted to understand the root cause of this increase.
Identity and cultural identity in the Emirati society, and I am using palm trees as a medium or vessel to go over these complex topics and understand them better.
My capstone is about women's political participation in the Federal National Council. I study Emirati's perception of the council's work, influence, and role in society.
My capstone studies the effects of health insurance co-payments on utilization and health outcomes. I'll be specifically looking at the short-term impacts from a policy reform in the UAE.
My capstone project is about designing a satellite mission for a 3U CubeSat in order to study high-energy atmospheric physics and focus on the phenomenon of terrestrial gamma ray flashes.
So my capstone addressed capacity building in Ras Al Khaimah with a focus on providing recommendations to help students reach their full potential.
I'm working on a joint project where we're designing a recycled wastewater treatment facility in the Northern Emirates. I'm mainly focused on designing the concrete structural housing of the tanks.
For my capstone, I'm estimating the returns to education in the UAE.
My capstone is a photographic exploration of the static and the unsteady circumstances of our human condition through the dynamics of the sea and its relics.
Climate change and the effects it has on the world's economy. My paper aims to pinpoint the direct relationship between education and CO2 emissions.
So I'm using a theoretical method to study the effects of a value-added tax on economic activity in the UAE.
My capstone is about board interlocks within the UAE and comparing that network with the network of board interlocks in France and the US.
Conflict between competing groups in their transitionary phases from military conflict to institutional politics.
My capstone is a biomimetics project on lizard tail autotomy. We're basically trying to mimic the process of how lizards drop their tails.
So my capstone talks about the stigma we have here in the United Arab Emirates. The story is about a half Emirati, half Filipino boy who goes through his daily life in school. What he wants is to fit in and be accepted, but what he really needs is self-confidence. And what he eventually does is he defies his own culture in the hopes of becoming one of the Emirati classmates.
How the East-West binary is often misapplied in global art history as a methodology. So I look specifically at porcelain, and I have 3 porcelain objects from the 16th, 18th, and 21st century, and try to find alternative theoretical frameworks to analyze their East-West exchanges.
If 2 people are playing a competitive game and one person is outright destroying the other person, it's not that much fun for either player. So for my capstone, I've built a game to test assistance methods to help the weaker player to increase the overall enjoyment.
My capstone is a short theatrical performance looking at the fear of loneliness in the digital age.
My capstone is about human capital of the Emirati youth, and I'm analyzing correlations between personality and productivity of the Emirati youth.
My capstone is a translation from Spanish to English of the novel La Fila India by Antonio Ortuño. It is a dark humor satirical novel about human trafficking in southern Mexico.
My capstone looks at evidence for caste-based discrimination in India's largest employment program, which aims to provide livelihood security to rural India, basically.
My capstone is about women leadership in the United Arab Emirates. I have conducted interviews with women leaders in the country to learn about their experiences and what they believe are the factors that made them achieve the positions they are in today.
So I'm doing the economic analysis of the Fair Sentencing Act of 2010 in America and see if it substantively affected the judicial system in America.
It's a history of tea and also a story of sovereignty and state building
in the borderlands of southwest China and Tibet.
I am looking at the impact of textbooks and teacher training on mathematics learning. And to do this, I ran an impact evaluation on a randomized study in Uganda working with 32 primary 6 classrooms.
My capstone is a series of compositions and sound design I'm doing for 4 other film capstones.
Comparative analysis on rhetoric and propaganda by different Mujahideen groups during the Afghanistan civil war. So we're seeing how that changes across time.
I did a series of qualitative interviews with Emirati men to understand how they negotiate masculinity in the context of state-promoted women's employment.
So my capstone is a philosophical investigation of what makes a person the same person across time.
So in my capstone, I'm estimating the equilibrium exchange rate between the Czech crown and the euro, as the Czech central bank has been artificially manipulating the currency.
My capstone is about Twitter sentiment and stock performance, and in particular I'm looking at customer-facing companies and non-customer-facing companies and see whether there's a difference.
A short sci-fi film set in a world where people are only allowed to speak a certain amount of words in their lifetime, and it's the story of a little girl who loves talking and only has 4 words left.
Well, I'm looking at how past repression affects identity formation, and I focus on the Catalan independence movement and how their treatment under Franco's regime kind of spurred their need to become more independent from Spain.
My capstone is about the impact of mobile financial services or mobile money in driving people to save in the formal sector, so banks, microfinance institution. And I'm looking at it in Kenya, which is a very successful example of mobile money with its leading tool called M-Pesa.
We're designing a system that will use solar-powered Stirling engines to produce energy for water desalination and pumped hydroelectricity storage system.
My capstone's called Rahala. It's a semi-autobiographical novella that deals with issues of Palestinian identity, exile, and the concept of home.
I'm looking into the impact of informal loans on the financial behavior of the poor, and I'm focusing on a randomized controlled trial that happened in India from 2005 to 2010.
My capstone is studying the impact of information to potential migrants in Indramayu. I have written a collection of essays that explore space and place and collective and displaced identity in the South Asian immigrant population of Abu Dhabi.
So in my capstone, I'm exploring the effects of the language used for social media engagement during Georgia House of Representatives elections.
So I'm looking at the genetic mechanisms underlying the differences in immune responses towards malaria in children in Burkina Faso.
Through my capstone, I'm developing a mathematical method for reconstruction of discontinuous real-time transportation data through a machine learning algorithm that learns the specifics of each traffic scenario and then reconstructs the missing observations.
I'm using the case study of 3 Christian Orthodox social movements from Romania in order to see how new technologies and especially social media allows them to get involved into new political activities more successfully.
My capstone is a series of policy recommendations for integrating refugees into Athens, Greece.
I've designed a wastewater treatment facility for the Northern Emirates, treating 225,000 meters cubed of water per day. And my team has taken best practices from around the world to bring them here into the UAE.
My capstone is about Fresnel lens concentrated solar-powered style engine for pumped storage hydroelectricity and reverse osmosis desalination.
My capstone is a staged concept album about domestic violence in my village in my home country of Trinidad and Tobago.
I'm trying to understand the UAE growth trajectory, so specifically the role of human capital accumulation in the past 25 years in the UAE.
My capstone is a policy proposal aimed at strengthening family businesses in the UAE in terms of sustainability and continuity.
So I'm trying to understand the mechanism by which a mutated anti-cancer protein aggregates, as well as developing and testing different classes of cancer therapeutics that target this aggregation.
My capstone is designing a water treatment facility that's supposed to take wastewater and treat it to a tertiary standard. And the design is supposed to be implemented in the Northern Emirates.
So my capstone investigates the relationship between the visual properties of logos. So what makes certain logos more likable than others?
So I'm looking at the effect of the 2014 Russian financial crisis on Kazakhstan's financial markets.
My capstone project looks at whether imperial infrastructure development created market integration in late Qajar Persia.
So I'm using molecular dynamics simulations to study the mechanism of the hepatitis C polymerase, which is the enzyme that replicates the viral genome.
as well as the mode of action of some drugs that are being used as treatment.
In my capstone, I use in vivo MRI cell tracking study and computational physics modeling in order to show that there exist innate electromagnetic fields around neurons that attract the T cells and initiate multiple sclerosis.
My capstone is about the British rule in the tribal areas of Pakistan, located between Pakistan and Afghanistan. It essentially analyzed 150 years of British rule, its policies, and how it came about to dominate the region.
My capstone is about the AIDS activist organization, ACT UP, which was founded in 1987, and I'm going to be exploring how they were engaging with media, both mass media as well as self-produced media.
For my capstone, I've created a tool to help with the annotation of complex and morphologically rich languages such as Urdu and Arabic. Compared to English, not a lot of resource has been put into these languages, and my tool is going to improve that.
I'm looking at Chinese blockbusters in the last 5 years and how they engage with political rhetoric under Xi Jinping.
My capstone looks at the impact of increased internet access on state fragility, specifically whether it increases group grievances or state legitimacy.
My capstone's on gendered citizenship in the UAE, which I do by analyzing marriage laws and state restrictions on marriage practices.
My capstone is about renewable energy, focusing on solar panels and how to get Emiratis to be incentivized to use them in their households.
So my capstone is about volatility transmission from global oil prices to Russian stock markets by different industries.
My capstone is about education in Niger.
Based on interviews with young Emirati girls who are fans of Korean soap opera, I examine how this foreign media serves them as resources to negotiate and regenerate their cultural identity.
So my capstone is looking into the factors that affect human decision-making processes.
So my capstone is about globalization and risk diversification. And I argue that as countries become more globalized, a new type of risk has emerged which cannot be diversified away.
My capstone is about developing a biomimetic structure of a lizard tail undergoing autotomy, the defensive mechanism when lizards drop their tail to escape a predator.
My capstone is an analysis of Carmen Balcells, who is the literary agent for Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Mario Vargas Llosa, Carlos Fuentes. And so the work of my capstone has been to try to rewrite her into the history of the Latin American boom from which she's been forgotten.
My capstone project is about Iranian coffee house paintings, and I try to situate the coffee house paintings within intellectual and political discourses about national identity and traditional culture in Iran.
My capstone examines the developmental origins of the stories we tell about our lives. My research establishes that early attachment relationships to primary caregivers contribute to how we interpret our experiences later in our lives.
I'm trying to see land tenancy rights in indigenous communities in Ecuador and how it's affected their access to income and their capacity to escape poverty.
My capstone is on smart materials that undergo a chemical reaction and change color when exposed to light. And these materials have caught our attention as potential tools for solar energy harvesting and storage.
I'm doing my capstone on the Kuwaiti progressive movement and on leftist resistance in contemporary Kuwait.
My capstone is about the attitude determination control system for CubeSat. CubeSat is a small satellite, and the attitude control system essentially controls its orientation while it's in space, so that if it points in the wrong direction, we can orient it back to the direction we want it to point in.
So for my capstone, I'm writing a play that chronicles the lives of 3 teenagers in Lahore, Pakistan, and gauges the impact of the themes of religion, sexuality, and class differences on their interactions and the choices that they make.
I'm exploring the diffusion of direct democratic policy choices in Texas jurisdictions, where I find that these policy choices, which are referenda, spread not unlike diseases do.
I'm analyzing renewable energy policies both in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, and I'm investigating public's attitudes towards such policies by Emirati households.
An experiential documentary that explores the role of love in the life of the average human being.
So my capstone is about investigating supervisory and regulatory frameworks in 3 countries, Saudi Arabia, Malaysia, and the UAE, and what can be done to strengthen the legal and regulatory frameworks in these countries.
My capstone qualitatively explores discourses on women and work in Oman, both in the policy sphere and also through the narratives of the women themselves.
I'm exploring the effects of high-frequency trading on stock price volatility in the US stock exchange.
I'm looking at the effects of the Ethiopian Commodity Exchange, which is a market introduced by the Ethiopian government in 2008. And I'm looking at its effects on agricultural exports in Ethiopia.
The effect of workplace diversity on the relationships between employees and their supervisors.
Creating a low-power indoor localization system where the purpose is to find the position estimates of devices in a network. This is useful in a range of applications, including swarm robotics and manufacturing.
I'm studying the Islamic banking industry in the UAE, and more specifically how well these Islamic banks are performing relative to conventional banks.
I am studying the impact of accessing a mobile money transfer service on the saving and credit instruments held by women in Rwanda.
My capstone topic is natural resources and intrastate violence, the case of Central African Republic. My research focuses on intrastate conflict variation with Central African Republic.
My capstone analyzes the economic impact of hosting world mega events in developing nations.
My capstone is a biopsychic dissection of queerness and monstrosity through theater design, a blood-soaked netherworld of disfigurement and transformation.
Sentiment analysis in tweets, and so what I do basically is I teach a computer or system morality or sentiments.
One step before the refugee crisis, integration of immigrants in 7 European countries. And it's about long-term aspects of integration and immigrant-specific differences between asylum seekers and work migrants.
My capstone is about developing a multi-sensing platform so as to find potential weak entry points in cybersecurity systems with the goal of improving the security of those systems.
My capstone is exploring the long-term effects of early post-communist reforms on development in 30 countries.
My capstone consists of screening a library of Bt bacteria, which are known to produce toxins against worms. And the purpose of it is to identify these toxins and try to engineer them into agricultural crops or to use them for health purposes.
My capstone explores the changing definition of Aboriginality in 1950s and 1960s Australia.
My capstone is a short film about a woman who is lost in life and she finds within herself the desire to be even more lost.
My capstone analyzes how land disputes in the Department of Cauca in Southwest Colombia are a consequence of the multicultural rights framework for ethnic groups and of the expansion of the country's productive frontier.
I'm looking at the Canadian elections. I'm looking at the internet penetration rates and voter turnout in Canada since 2006 till 2015 elections.
My capstone project is a multi-perspective analysis of a trilogy of plays as dramatizations of life during Nicolae Ceausescu's communist dictatorship in Romania.
My capstone is to build a CubeSat, which is a nanosatellite. The purpose of it is to detect TGF flashes from lightning.
My capstone is looking at the dissemination and appropriation of gendered ideology by women in Lebanese Sunni Islamist movements.
My capstone is about identifying and explaining changes in patterns within historical narratives about the Battle of Adwa, which was fought between Ethiopia and Italy in 1896.
My capstone is looking at the effect of immigration on voter preferences in Europe, and particularly how these preferences change when the number of refugees in the migrant mix increases.
My capstone looks at the production and performance of cultural identity within the context of the Circassian diaspora in Jordan.
So my capstone is about low-power indoor localization systems, which allows you to locate unknown objects in three-dimensional spaces, and this has a wide range of applications in industry, warehouses, swarm robotics, and a lot of other applications.
My capstone consists of implementing best practices in the design of integrated circuits so we make sure that circuits are safe and testable.
So my capstone investigates whether experience with people who are from another race plays a role in the way we determine whether we want to trust a stranger.
I'm writing about Ibn Jinni's Ishtiqaq al-Kabir, which is a grammatical theory in the 10th century in the Arabic linguistic tradition and about the origin of language.
So my capstone is about visualization of traffic. Basically, can we visualize traffic in a better way than what we have now, which is Google Maps with color lines. I'm looking at distortion visualizations instead.
So my capstone is called Group Membership and Altruistic Punishment in the Field. We study the effects of group membership on social norm enforcement through a natural field experiment.
My capstone looks at social studies textbooks in UAE schools to see how the state develops a historical narrative that furthers its legitimacy in the present. So it looks at ancient civilizations all the way to the country's plan to send a probe to Mars by 2021.
I'm studying the effect of pornography upon sexual consent in undergraduate students in the United States.
I'm building an autofocus system for cinematographers.
I'm studying discrimination in the online markets of Abu Dhabi by selling new and used phones onto Bizzle.com by sellers of different race.
My capstone's entitled The Annotated Big Riff Shrift. I'm looking at Gottlob Frege's foundational text in mathematical logic and providing philosophical and historical context. I'm also updating his notation from a more antiquated notation to the modern notation of mathematical logic.
So my capstone is trying to understand how, from a homogeneous pool of very similar cells, we can generate more than 70 types of cells that populate the brain of the fruit fly.
My capstone is an exploration of the side alleys in Abu Dhabi, the spaces between the buildings, and how people use them.
My capstone explores mining investment flows in Sierra Leone, determining whether quality of governance affects an area's attractiveness to investment.
So for my capstone, I worked in the field of structural DNA nanotechnology, and I made nanomaterials composed of triangular units made of DNA.
In my capstone, I look at 2 novels by women writers and elaborate the ways in which they revise history through literature.
My capstone is about debt financing decisions made by firms in Central and Eastern Europe in response to economic integration into the European Union.
So my capstone is trying to investigate how job creation can be attributed to firms of different sizes, and I'm studying the policy reforms that actually increased job creation in the US over the past 3 decades.
So I'm comparing English and Urdu propaganda published by Jamiat-e-Islami Afghanistan during the Soviet-Afghan War and tracing the ideological differences between both sources.
I am making a film about a guy trying to make a film.
My capstone is a time-offset dialogue interaction system, which basically captures anyone's story and contextualizes it so that the system asks individual questions about their respective stories.
My capstone is an installation-based documentary about love and the different types of love that human beings experience throughout their lives and the power that this love holds for all of us.
I'm building a tool to help researchers and scientists to turn the unstructured data that they collect and discover whatever hidden structure there is in the data.
My capstone exhibition hopes to open the conversation around the way Muslims react to Islamophobia to help people feel more comfortable with who they are in their own identity.
My capstone is a joint capstone between literature and theater about trans and cross-generational trauma, looking specifically at the relationship between silence and culpability and how it affects our ability to move on.
I'm devising new strategies to help indoor driverless cars.
My capstone is about how Muslims in China from the 17th and 19th century wrote about Islamic heresy and orthodoxy.
My capstone is a devised solo performance that grapples with the racist gendered identities of Zimbabwe in an attempt to reconcile the present with the past.
So my capstone is an MEG study where I study the visual language response of the Chinese native speakers, English native speakers, and English Chinese learners.
My capstone is a short film about a young grieving mother trying to immerse herself into art to cope with the loss of her daughter.
I'm investigating this topic called choice overload, where I propose a new theoretical model and also design experimental design to test the theories.
I do a close reading of Fatimid Khotab in order to describe the unification of North African messianic movements with structures of state in the 10th century.
It is a short film about a 30-year-old Chinese woman who is torn between duty towards her overbearing mother and her desire for independence.
My capstone is about mujahideen groups and their rhetoric that they used during the Civil War and how that evolved from the beginning of the Civil War until the very end.
So my capstone investigates the dynamics of groups of motor proteins which transport cargo in our cells. We do measurements on the group and see what information we can extract about the single motors in these.
My capstone is on the normalized numerical range, and particularly for the 3x3 normal matrices.
My capstone is computations in characteristic classes of vector bundles, which is a subject in algebraic topology.
I'm building a multi-sensing platform to fingerprint programmable logic controllers, and this platform will also identify weak entry points that can be fixed for security purposes.
I'm from Shimla in the north of India.
My family is from Germany, but I grew up in the US.
Estonia.
Quebec in Canada.
From Sonoma, California.
From Russia.
Indonesia.
Brazil.
I'm from Syria.
Spain.
Bosnia. Pakistan.
Cali, Colombia.
Lithuania.
Australia.
Paris, France.
Czech Republic.
Trinidad and Tobago.
Washington, D.C.
I'm
area.
from Mexico.
I'm from the Republic of Moldova.
I'm from Kenya.
New Zealand. I'm from Uruguay.
I'm from Abu Dhabi.
From Egypt.
From Warrenton, Virginia.
St. Petersburg, Russia.
I'm from Dubai.
I'm from the U.S.
I'm from China.
Senegal.
I'm from Poland.
I'm originally from the Netherlands, but I spent most of my childhood growing up in Ras Al Khaimah.
I'm Panamanian and French.
I'm from Dubai, United Arab Emirates.
It's just a weird kind of day.
It's almost there, but it goes on, right?
I mean,
Finish today, and then I'll leave it to rest for another day.
Presented last night, so I feel so relieved.